Hey guys, here we are at the question and answer period of the wrong end of the snake, and Phil Kamp has graciously agreed to stay for just a little bit longer, and we had a couple of questions from viewers, and Tater, why don't you give us a question for Phil?
Sure. Hey, Phil, this is mainly about relationships. We don't try to get too technical, but maybe there was some people out there that really quite don't know what Klang is and what it does. If you could give us an explanation of that real quick and about binaural hearing and all that stuff.
Yeah, Klang is essentially a binaural in-ear monitoring processor. And binaural hearing is the way that we hear three-dimensional in real life. So we only have two ears, but we can localize sounds wherever they come from, right? And without going too far into the techie stuff in there, it comes down to three basically factors that our brain constantly analyzes to figure out the direction of a sound. One would be level, so if my fist is talking, it's louder here than on the other side. Time, so a sound that is coming from here will arrive first on this side and then on that side. It's a very small delay, and it's actually a frequency-dependent delay, but our brain is quick enough to pick up on that and actually measure it. And then the third factor would be a coloration of the sound that comes from the reflections of our earlobes and to a certain extent also our head shape and torso. So each angle of sound that arrives at our head gets reflected by different parts of our anatomy. And depending on shape and consistency of those points of reflection, every angle of sound sounds a little bit different. And yeah, that's what our brain is analyzing and calculating angles out of that. And the idea why we did that and why we brought that into an in-ear monitoring product was just simply to bring the natural way of hearing into in-ear monitoring, because stereo is just not a very natural thing. People often feel locked in, they don't have a relationship to the outside world. But also there's things like transparency and signals masking each other and missing focus that is completely natural for us as soon as we're standing in a room with immersive signals. But in in-ear monitoring, we're losing a lot of the things that our brain uses to dissect the audio and actually make sense of what we have to listen to. And especially in a performance situation, that is even more important, that a musician can relax and just basically just use the information that he's getting without having to actively dissect that stuff. And there's a couple of more advantages that come with it, like you can listen at a lower volume, you don't get affected by hearing fatigue as fast. So there are many benefits that we can get there, and by just bringing the binaural sound, so the natural way that our brain is used to hear working with audio, into in-ear monitoring, we're solving a lot of those things at once. And that was basically the idea.
You know what else I found? One of my first things with Klang and using it and experiencing it was being able to bring that click level down. And I was doing those other tricks we talked about, technical stuff that I don't know if it worked or not. But when I first used Klang, that was one of the I'll call it the side benefit that came about while using it. But not only was I able to bring the level down, it seemed like when you put it in its own spot in the mix and brought that level down, it seems like your brain just knew where to go to grab it when you needed it. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. So that's actually something that we call active and passive reception, and that actually has to do, amongst other things, with hearing fatigue. That listening to a stereo mix is a very hard and active process for the brain. So the brain needs to actively focus on picking out the things that we need, And there are a couple of tricks that we can use for that. I mean, Tater, you mentioned that trick with changing the EQ on the click for every day of the show and all that stuff. It's a cool idea.
That was my trick, yeah.
Well, it makes total sense. It makes sense to just stick out and just give the brain something new to focus on. However, as soon as all the signals are spread around us and they are externalized and they just behave like natural signals that are arriving at our head, our brain is doing all those analyzing passively in the background, so to say. And it just gives you a silver platter. So this is everything they can use. And then by just simply thinking about something, you hear it better. It sounds a little bit like black magic, but that's actually how hearing works. And it's something that you can always try out yourself. If you are sitting in a room, you, for the most part, or probably are sitting in a quiet room. But as soon as you just think about something like the AC or like the street noise that is just really faintly coming, suddenly you hear it much louder. And that is basically that part I was talking about in action.
Because I mean, even for the layman here, I just think if you go to let's say you go to a restaurant and the person you're eating with, man, do you hear that noise? No, I don't hear it. Listen, it sounds like this. And then all of a sudden you focus on it, and then you can't get rid of it. You know what I mean? So kind of in that vein, right?
Yeah.
It's a bit like de-essing.
Yes. It's funny. I've always talked about, even before all of this immersive stuff came, and even before, Klang, I've always talked to front of house engineers, teaching young front of house engineers that there isn't just stereo left and right. There's a depth to that you can create. And, especially when we're talking about these huge amount of inputs these days, 125 inputs. I had 140 inputs or something with Justin Bieber. Where do you place 140 inputs in just a left and right? Well, you don't. You have to think about the depth part of that as well. And so, when I spoke earlier about, hey, this could open the door for us that are having to stream and broadcast, I'm talking about, we've already talking about depth and left and right, but what about the height and behind us and, being able to place all of those kind of things in a mix to find space for 125 inputs is, something that interests me as a front of house guy. Yeah.
Especially if you combine those two things, so the techniques that you are using to create a depth and to create an image in stereo, you can apply the same techniques for that massively bigger field of audio that you can use in there. So you can just create even more of that, so It doesn't hurt it. It's not an alternative to what you're doing, but it's basically just a way to just extend the possibilities.
I see the hurdles are, I don't know if you remember, but you remember when 3D television came out, right? And so you bought a 3D television and it came with 4 pairs of glasses, right? And it never caught on because everyone was like, well, what do you mean? I gotta put on these glasses to experience the 3D experience. And for whatever reason, it never took really. So the hurdle of that in 3D audio is that, I think, is, saying to people, well, the only way that this really works, I mean, it works somewhat in speakers, but the only way it really works is if we, put on some headphones. But I think that we're also in a different time than that 3D television. We're in a time period where everybody has earpods in their ears for a lot of their life. So I don't know, getting past that hurdle, is that something that you guys talk about?
Yes, actually, and that's something that we, even in a relatively short time that Klang exists, that we are feeling. So 6 years ago, when we started to go public and to start talking to people, as soon as we mentioned the term 3D, we could see a lot of doors closing, Oh no, not another company claiming to be 3D. And we were like, no, but we really do it,
No, we really do. Yeah.
No, yeah. So that was at the beginning. That was quite difficult because 3D was just a marketing buzzword, and to be honest, we just never thought about it that it would be a negative thing that would actually make it harder for us. We thought, yeah, we do it, so why not call it like that?
Right.
And over the course of the last couple of years, immersive audio and video with the rise of VR made our lives much easier, actually. Because now even people who are not really deep in audio and technical stuff, they have a basic understanding of what immersive audio or immersive video and all that stuff is. And so now we can just say, okay, so you know it from there, you know, PlayStation with that thing, you know, the same thing, just for the ears of the musicians on stage. So that's the way that I can even explain it to, you know, a polka musician from the mountains of Bavaria. So.
That's awesome. Are you guys, speaking of that, because you mentioned it, are you guys into the video game market? Like, is there a market for you guys in that, or is that already something that somebody else is doing?
Well, there's a lot of people who are doing that. Never say never, but right now we don't have any plans to go there. We are a pro audio company, and you know, you should always stick to the stuff that you really know to do, how to do well. But again, never say never. Maybe some chances or some interesting things might appear at some point.
We don't use this word enough, but other people do, and we can start to use it. Stay in your wheelhouse. Is that right? Did I use it right? I like to use the word wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Stay in your lane.
Stay
I
in
was,
your own
I was
wheelhouse.
actually thinking about if there's an English term to say it. There's actually a German one. Schuster, bleib bei deinen Leisten.
Exactly.
So if you,
Stay in
it
your
sounds
own
very
wheelhouse.
German. It basically says the same thing. So.
That's awesome. Well, Phil, listen, man, thank you for coming, and thanks for spending a little bit of extra time. Hopefully
Yeah.
you guys
Thank
out
you
there
so
that
much.
that don't know a little bit about Klang, you got an explanation. Also, go to their website, klang.com. There's all kinds of
Download
webinars.
the app.
You know, yeah, download the app and see. You know, Tater, in my first experience was the demo of the actual app. Which is funny because we were, you know, this was a time period 6 years ago or whatever where, you know, I mean, apps were there, but they weren't like, you know, what they are today. And we're like, what? It's an app on a on an iPad? That's weird. But really it's amazing. It does some amazing things, and the demo will give you definitely an idea of what it does. And as soon as you download it, you'll want to go buy a unit for sure. So
I'm ready I do have one critique, though. I'm ready for a new demo song.
oh, demo song. You need a new song. I get it.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
ready for a new demo
yeah.
song.
I'm with you, and trust me,
Okay.
I listened to the song many more times than you do.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
It's a really nice song. I really
It's a
like
great
it, you know.
song.
But I sometimes I just wake up at night, you know, with the song in my ear. It's like, you know, yeah, I know what you mean. But it's actually not that easy because, you know, you need to have the rights for that.
The rights,
So
yeah, I get it.
we are looking for stuff that we can use as a next demo song. But again, it's it can be quite tricky to use it in that way.
You know, it's funny. We get asked, you know, to do demos all the time, and to, you know, more and more people send me emails and stuff and say, hey, I want you to show some real world stuff with tracks. And I always go, well, the bands that I worked for aren't going to give me any sort of rights for you to hear the individual stuff. So, yeah. So anyway, it's a thing.
Sadly.
Yeah.
Well, Phil, thanks for coming, man. We sure do appreciate it. And hang in there
Thank you
in
for having
this
me.
Yep.
hard time. And we really hope that we see you in person soon. Have you heard if NAMM has been canceled, or is it still going? Do you know?
As far as I know, it's still going. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
So
there
maybe-
are always rumors floating around, but rumors are usually rumors, so I just wait for facts.
For facts, yeah. So
You know what my new thing is now?
what?
I don't believe anything about anything coming back until I see Cheap Trick has booked a date. Because if Cheap Trick is playing, you know gigs are back on.
Yes,
That's
the
my
band
new
that constantly tours for the last 40 years.
That's right.
Oh my
As soon as
God.
Cheap Trick's back, we're all back.
Yeah, that's funny.
I will have a look out for that.
Well, hopefully NAMM happens because I think then both Tater and I would be able to see you in person in January. So,
Yeah.
Yes.
anyway,
Looking forward to
take
that.
care, and we
Thanks,
love you,
Phil.
man. Hang
You
in
too,
there.
guys.